We all know that Dr. Zomboss is a pretty smart guy. However, some of his plans are not quite reflective of that. And it got me wondering about what his best and worst schemes are. So naturally, I made a tier list, ranging from the Galaxy Brain tier down to the Absolute Moron tier. I'll be working my way up through the countless capers Edgar George Zomboss has plotted, and more or less go insane while doing so. I'll be judging him based both on how good the plan is as a concept, as well as how intelligently he executes them and reacts to the plant's interference. Now, let's start things off by showing the worst, absolute, bottom-of-the-barrel plan Zomboss has in store for us. And it's... I bet you weren't expecting that. I kinda knew what I was getting into when it comes to the PvZ comics, given how scattershot and random the newer ones are, but wow! Faulty Fables is on another level of atrocious. In this brilliant tale, Zomboss plans to read zombie versions of fairy tales to the town of Neighborville on repeat, as he deduced that bedtime stories make people fall asleep without issue. By doing this, he presents himself in a very open, very vulnerable spot where I'm sure some cactus could snipe him very, very easily. Gee, Kamek, if only you introduced a certain pea shooter who is specifically described to be an excellent shot. This is literally just a worse version of Warren Pease' parody angle for Zomboss, and spoiler alert, Warren Pease isn't very high on this list either. But it gets better. Throughout the entire comic, Nate, Patrice, and the plants are trying to make a sleep raid to counter Zomboss so they can put him to sleep. For some reason, it's completely pointless though, because Zomboss puts himself to sleep thanks to his own stories. To my recollection, this is the only time where a PvZ story's plot resolves itself without any plant interaction whatsoever. The comic literally went out of its way to dumb down the main ensemble to make Zomboss' scheme appear more threatening. And they didn't even stick the landing, as the plants Crazy Dave, Nate, and Patrice could all literally be written out of the comic, and the outcome would not change. It's that bad. I was going to put this in F tier, but when comparing the other plants here to this utter travesty, it deserves its own tier at the bottom. Plans so ridiculously terrible, the plants didn't even have to do anything to thwart them. Anyways, let's see what actually makes up our absolute moron tier. The one at the bottom of it is the Unpredictables. Coming in at 27th place, Zomboss' plan started out sounding good, but it didn't last long. Oh man, how do I even get started on this one? This book's plot literally relies on Zomboss being stupid for it to function. They make jokes about how he isn't intelligent multiple times. He invents a robot made to counter the plants, but it rebels against him and he gaslights Zomboss into thinking that the zombies won. The plot of this was so hands-off that it felt like a giant cutscene. Okay, can I just quickly talk about how clickbaited I feel with this one in particular? The little blurb at the back of the book usually does a good enough job at explaining what goes on in the story, but here there's the thinnest layer of what actually happens in the story versus complete misinformation. It's pretty disappointing too, because the back cover makes it look like Zomboss actually did something pretty smart. He invents 4 robots that are designed to predict and counter the plant's every move. Sure, I knew the plants were going to win in the end as per usual, but it'd at least be somewhat interesting to see how they work around a more unique foe than the usual horde of zombies. But no. The robot Zomboss creates fails at its job spectacularly as soon as it was released, and then it switches sides on a whim. And did you notice how the back cover said 4 robots while I only addressed 1? Because for all intents and purposes, there is only 1 robot in the story. Zomboss invents the first one, then the robot creates other copies of itself to do literally nothing except stand in the background and act as the base for fart jokes. And when the synopsis says, Nate, Patrice, and Crazy Dave will have to pull out all the stops, protect Neighborville, it becomes the funniest part of the book on reread. The entire time, the plants are in complete control, to the point where Nate says that they have to try harder to stop effortlessly stomping the zombies, to maintain the facade that they're losing. Patrice literally says that Zomboss isn't a threat, And to be fair, she's correct, because Zomboss apparently got his brain removed in this comic and thought it would be a good idea to pose as Crazy Dave to try and interrogate Patrice. Next time, do better. As much as I'd like to put the Unpredictables in the plans so ridiculously terrible the plants didn't have to do anything to thwart them tier due to his overall stupidity, I'm ranking his plans, which in this case isn't terrible. The issue is that the way he follows through with the plan and blindly trusts this robot is what drags him down to the prestigious spot in Absolute Moron and second to last place on this list. At number 26, we have The Greatest Show Unearthed. It was a while since I read it last, so I tried to see if I could remember the plot of it before I actually saw what it was, and completely set myself up for disappointment in the process. I thought that the plot was that Zomboss wanted to open a circus and trap all of the spectators, and they could cover their tracks by packing their things and heading to the next town before too much suspicion arises. Plus, with enough makeup and red noses, they could conceal the fact that the clowns on stage are actually zombies, especially when seen from afar. I also remember that there is an actual human circus in the comic, so a circus appearing out of nowhere didn't sound too suspicious if they just took that one over and used it as a disguise. Sounds great! And yeah, the comic did something similar, but it sucked out all of the cunning aspects and made it infinitely less interesting. In a stroke of absolute genius by Zomboss, he deduced that all zombies have a deep, primal desire to run away and join the circus thanks to some banter by a news anchor. So, he created his own circus, and instead of drawing people in to see it, the plan is to get random guys to join the circus and trap them that way. As far as I'm aware, the people who did end up spectating were just allowed to roam free. What? Zomboss only manages to capture people in this way because the plot had to happen. It's super unfortunate with how this comic took a hard left turn for nonsense, because the section where Zomboss absolutely decimates a patch of land and lays waste to all the plants there actually did a good job at establishing a threat and showing that he means business. But that only went on for so long because, hey look guys! Crazy Dave is licking Zomboss! Isn't that so funny? Please laugh! Things get better too! The comic explains that the zombies can't eat the people right away because they're waiting on an order of brain BQ sauce to use on them. What? What about that guy from Timepocalypse? And after that, the plants literally let Zomboss go free in the end. What about that other guy from Timepocalypse? This comic is breaking me! Let's move on before my own brain needs barbecue sauce after this lobotomy. At number 25, we have War and Peace. I warned you that it wouldn't be very high on this list, but F tier is better than, Z tier. Anyways, this is the original Faulty Fables, so to say. Zomboss's plan is taking over a book club. Huh? He also mildly touched on a scheme where he wanted to gaslight people into thinking that zombies aren't so bad after all. The issue is that he has literally no subtlety, but the humans are unaware for the sake of comic relief. Fun! This is also interrupted constantly by more of Zomboss's wacky haha zombie fairy tales. Which, yeah. While the way he's dealt with is kind of anticlimactic since they use pea shooters to batter him with acquired sleep pellets from Crazy Dave's yawn mower, a device that prevents people from falling asleep, so... Hey, wait! Why didn't they just do this the first time in Faulty Fables? Why even bother with all that sleep ray stuff when they had the perfect solution right there? I mean, seriously, the yawn mower is the exact gadget they needed. Zomboss wanted to put Naperville to sleep, right? So why didn't the plants just run a bunch of mowers across the town to keep everyone awake, and then use the yawn clippings they get from it to give back to Zomboss? That solution was right there, and it would have made a great callback. But at the end of the day, Zomboss showed a kernel of intelligence with his activism subplot, but I went over that already. In 24th place, Better Homes and Gardens is just Zomboss doing a MrBeast challenge. Today, guys, I sold houses to random people for $1. Be sure to like and subscribe. But surprise, the houses are actually traps. Again, no functioning human being would buy a house that costs $5 from a smelly realtor that can only say brains. I get that this is a parallel to Nate and Patrice upgrading the human homes with anti-zombie security, but it just makes it even dumber when you realize that these people are willingly leaving their now upgraded homes behind for something just as likely as the Nigerian prince rolling up and forking over a briefcase full of gold. But wait! At the end of the comic, Zomboss actually creates a giant house mech that can scoop up people without issue. Which, why didn't he just do that the first time? Never mind, it is still the most epic conclusion ever! And somehow Zomboss was stupid enough to not only make it not rust resistant, it completely obliterates his bot in a matter of seconds. There's a comic later down the line that handles the kaiju robot battle a lot better, as this kind of feels like a hollow way of trying to redeem Zomboss' stupidity with his house selling idea. If the plan was more cohesive, I would have put it higher, but for now, it's gonna be on the tail end of Absolute Moron. Well, now that we're out of the Absolute Moron tier, we have a little problem here. No, not an actual problem. That's the name of the comic I have at number 23. It's a callback to one of the minigames in PvZ1, which I can always appreciate. Zomboss now decided to create millions of tiny zombies and release them into the air and infect all of the humans. From there, they broadcast instructions to trick them into believing it's their conscious, telling them to go directly into a trap. That sounds pretty good, but the conscious part is a little goofy. I guess that having millions of tiny zombies crawling over the humans would be a good enough strategy to incapacitate Zomboss' targets, but he needed to make it 10 times more elaborate to give the plants a decent shot at stopping him. It's weird because Patrice even mentioned that it's an incredibly easy way for the zombies to get into people's brains, so it kinda makes even less sense. This comic's plot is also resolved by a lame Deus Ex Machina, and not a tactical victory, so this leads me to think, why doesn't he just do it again? Here the tiny zombies just got stuck on some flypaper and Zomboss goes home. Which again, what about the other guy from Timepocalypse? Now that he knows this weakness, couldn't he just try the same thing again without that oversight? It makes no sense. And what about the people who were already covered in tiny zombies? The comic sort of just forgets about them. I know that Dave sent out some bugs to drown out all the noise, but that was countered by Mr. Stubbins actually killing them all with bug spray. Yikes. Dave and the others don't know that there's now nothing stopping Zomboss from carrying out the rest of his plan anymore, but they sort of just gloss over it. Well, okay, this comic is in the smooth brain tier for a reason. And at number 22, we have Multi-Ballistic, the comic that inspired me to make this video. I know this was quite a while ago, but when I was catching up on the series' lore to make the first part of the story for my Garden Warfare 3 series, I decided that I could read a few of the comics I picked up for fun. I forgot this one existed, and I thought, hey, it wouldn't hurt if I read this, so I did. The first thing that came to my mind was, what was Zomboss' real plan here? Seems needlessly convoluted to set up an entire pinball game in the city that requires you to win to automatically capture all the citizens when you could've just rigged the system to not require you to win and do it from the start. You could argue that Zomboss is more about the theatrics about his pinballinator, but it is shown later that zombies can hit the buttons on their own to progress the game even further. And when the plants inevitably destroy the pinball machine, it's shown that that's all that Zomboss cared about because he doesn't have a failsafe where he just triggers the sweepers to scoop up all the people anyways. This plan would have made it a lot higher if it is more well thought out, because at the moment, it's probably one of the most short-sighted plans Zomboss has ever made. But hey, at the very least, it gave us cherry. Number 21 is the Garden Path. What am I even supposed to say about this one? It's a choose-your-own-adventure story, but Zomboss doesn't even have much of an overarching plan. It's a traditional zombie attack plot to back up the experimental format, which I can't really blame the writers for, but I'm ranking Zomboss' plan's intelligence, so if there's no plan, there's no intelligence. However, it also doesn't mean he did anything extremely stupid, so it will be put into the smooth brain tier solely because there's nothing to actively hinder his plot past that point. But I'll be fair though, because there are a couple of the bad endings where Zomboss does succeed, which is kind of nice. If I wanted to read a PvZ choose-your-own-adventure story but actually good, I'd just read Plant Your Path. Crone Sweet Home is my number 20 pick. Zomboss' plan isn't too bad on paper, but given his experiences with his minions' intelligence, it was never going to work. Here, he planned to educate his zombies to become a functioning part of society in disguise so they can attack when the humans least expect it. As part of this, it's really just a case of Clark Kent syndrome where the zombies are handed a bunch of human face strap-on masks and it fools everybody. I'll give Zomboss some credit though, because if the humans are really that easy to deceive, then there's no point in investing in traditionally more effective disguises. As you might guess, the zombies are terrible at pretending to be humans, so the plan doesn't work. And in 19th place, we have Lawn of Doom! It's a Halloween special comic, which immediately gave me the impression that this was going to be a lot lighter on the plot than usual. Here, Zomboss plans to decorate some houses with traps designed to capture trick-or-treaters, as well as infiltrate the zombies into them, pretending that they're only costumes. This feels like a slightly more reasonable version of the Grown Sweet Home plan, as when he captures a bunch of children, he coerces them into signing a petition to change Halloween into his own Lawn of Doom holiday. We never see any of those kids again after the cutaway, so interpret that how you will. I'll note that halfway through the story, he stumbles upon some weird legal deed to Halloween, which somehow allows him to change the rules of how the holiday works. Him acting like the humans are going to follow his new traditions is pretty goofy as well. And also, why are the humans practicing Halloween traditions in the middle of an apocalypse? And finally, he loses in the first truly baffling way, where Nate DMs him, 1v1 me or coward, lol, and Zomboss falls for it. The trapping part is intelligent, but the way how he just homes in on his Lawn of Doom stuff and ignores the aspect of his plan that seems to be working effectively, only to then throw it away because someone in BFN used the chicken sighting emote on him immensely hampered his plot's intelligence. So this is quite the odd placement, as it's full of high highs and valleys of lows, so I think it can average out to being placed in the smooth brain tier. Oh yeah, and I might as well mention it, including some of the PvZ Heroes plants into this, and only this comic, to my recollection, is a very nice touch. And on the topic of Heroes plants, that's our first non-comic entry on this list at number 18. You might have forgotten that this game has the thinnest veil of a plot in the history of plots, but it does. Remember when Zomboss made his Herotron 3000, or whatever it's called, to transform random mook zombies into superheroes? Yeah, all of this is explained in like 12 comic panels and the game's tutorial, and never again. This plan is only so low on the list because Zomboss put a conveniently placed self-destruct button on his machine that not only destroyed it, but turned a bunch of plants into superheroes. And that's not even the worst part, as he did the most diabolical thing out of any plan he's ever concocted, ever, hands down, no contest, just don't even bother asking. He's the reason Solar Flare exists. Number 17 is Dream a Little Scheme. Zomboss plans to enter the dreams of Neighborville citizens and make them dream of good experiences with the zombies. It's just another iteration of War and Peas from the zombies aren't so bad plotline, but I guess this one is slightly more intelligent because by invading dreams, you're technically influencing what the person dreaming is thinking. I mean, it kind of works, I guess. He also gets defeated because he doesn't know how to deal with a bunch of tall nuts. You know, Zomboss, it's not like you presented an entire thesis specifically on that topic to your college and Bully for You, but it's okay. I don't expect basic continuity to exist in these comics anymore. But wait! They even reference Bully for You in this exact comic! Still does a major cameo in it! I'm losing my mind! Ah! Hey guys, Twilight from the future here. As it turns out, there were two comics that I forgot to rank here, so this is where I'm going to be putting them. Luckily, both Zapped and Infestation aren't incredibly stupid ideas, and they're very close to each other, so I don't need to interrupt the video twice. In Infestation, Zomboss's plan is to throw a bunch of imps at Deadbeard's pirate ship so they can take it over and recruit a bunch of overpowered zombies that he left on an island. You might think that sounds kinda smart, but this entire situation he's in only happened because he lacked basic reading comprehension. And when looking at these zombies, we don't actually see them fight, so we have no clue what their power level is outside of a handful of feats listed on trading cards of them. Vanquish me now, it's 2025! Also, Zomboss prioritizes rescuing the imps instead of the zombies that he came to the island in the first place for. Brilliant priorities there, Zomboss. It's also a certified, what about the other guy from Timepocalypse moment from Nate and Patrice. Zapped isn't faring too much better, unfortunately. Zomboss has one running gag throughout the majority of the comic, with that being, Oh man, I did there accidentally just spoil my entire plan over the intercom. Aw, shucks. So that doesn't make him look any smarter. Anyways, his actual plan is that he wants to produce zombies at an increased rate, although that somehow comes at the cost of them being even stupider. So these zombies just end up standing around and doing nothing. Riveting, I know. He also pulls up some playground logic on the heroes by saying, "Well, actually, you can't do that because I made my machine indestructible. Mwahahaha!" And the heroes clap back with even more playground logic by saying, "Well, actually, you didn't make one part of it invulnerable, and we can just unplug it and destroy it that way. Yippee!" And then Zomboss is all like, "No! You foiled my plans again, you meddling children! I can't even possibly fathom the idea of me plugging it in a different spot or fixing the outlet. No!" And then that's the end of the comic. I honestly can't decide which of these two is smarter than the other, so I'll let you decide. Either way, I'm fairly confident that it can belong somewhere in this area of the tier list, so that's where it's gonna stay. And that's it for Future Twilight. See y'all later! The next tier is the Pretty Intelligent tier. Let's hope that these next entries don't make me feel like I'm slowly deteriorating from the inside as I suffer through these for your enjoyment. Wait, what? For the first Pretty Intelligent plan, we have Dynamite in 16th place. Here, Zomboss plans to recruit a bunch of animals to dig holes in the backyards of Neighborville's citizens and prevent the plants from living there. The back cover tricked me into thinking that the zombies caught a few humans for real, but it was just an imaginary sequence where Zomboss explains his plan. When the regular animals didn't work thanks to Zomboss having some awful logic, he Jurassic Parked a bunch of dinosaurs into the present and set them loose. That's an okay plan on its own, as it means the plants would also have to deal with the dinosaurs in addition to the zombies, but Zomboss didn't realize that his prehistoric friends hold loyalty to no one. It then just devolves into dinosaur antics from there, and his plan starts to fall apart. What separates this plan from the smooth brain ones, though, is that he is able to rebound pretty effectively by creating a robot dinosaur with the goal of having it influence the other dinos into doing his bidding, something Zomboss himself wasn't really able to accomplish. Unfortunately for him, dubious loyalty struck again when his robot dinosaur rebelled against him thanks to Dave's toaster. This plan is only so low because it may have been somewhat effective, but the execution was very messy with an awful initial idea, only remotely saved by his last-minute pivot with the robot dinosaur.
Let's say you come across an evil tree.
You again?
At number 15, we have Battle for Neighborville, as well as its tie-in comic. To fit with the game's overall goofier tone, Zomboss's schemes aren't really as tightly woven as they could be, especially when compared to the other two entries in the series. I'll start with the comic as I don't have much to say about it. Zomboss traps all of the Garden Warfare 1 and 2 plants, so they have an excuse to show off all the cool new BFN characters. There isn't much to it otherwise since Zomboss wasn't insanely proactive after he laid the trap, as the zombies at that point were still in control of the city. Now for the game. It really feels like a large portion of the game was just a giant vanity project for Zomboss versus genuine attempts to feast on brains. Like, he devotes an entire mission to stopping the plants from mildly vandalizing a statue of him, as well as making a giant flag that can be seen from space. As zombies, you can actually interact with humans on several occasions during the story, and they're fine. At least the Peachy District plot is actually quite good, where he tries to hack the TV stations to somehow teleport zombies into people's houses. The PvE plans are ranging from decent to quite good, with the disco traps feeling like a lesser version of the comic plotline, to the Mount Steep plot to blow up the volcano and cook Neighborville alive is surprisingly cinematic and pretty cool. Given how I've been trashing some of these plots here, you're probably wondering what influenced me to put BFN this high on the list. And to that, we get to see possibly one of the most 5-dimensional chess plays from Zomboss, and it genuinely took me by surprise when I connected the dots. And that plot is, of course, the Tourist Trap Island story. Zomboss decided to make an island that lures humans in, stranding them with zombies through his violent weather machines. You might be unsure why humans would be out in the ocean in the first place during the zombie apocalypse, but Zomboss is 4 parallel universes ahead of you. As stated in the Garden Warfare comics, all of the humans in Suburbia were sent to a free, all-inclusive ice cream cruise by future versions of Nate and Patrice to vacate the city from the zombie attack. So Zomboss took advantage of that by making a trap specifically designed for the ship full of people for the zombies to feast on. That was honestly super well thought out, and if it wasn't for the rest of the game's wide spectrum of quality and his other plans, it would have made it a lot higher. I guess if you're still curious, when ranking the individual plots from BFN, Turning Point goes into Absolute Moron, Loggy Acres, Town Center, and Goopy Golly go into Smooth Brain, the Comet can stay around this area, PC District and Mount Steep can get a boost higher up into Pretty Intelligent, and Tourist Trap Island gets shot all the way into the Near Genius tier. In 14th place, we have Snow Thanks. Even though Zomboss's plan doesn't come from a stroke of genius initially, he plays around a side effect from one of his inventions to freeze over Neighborville, trapping the humans and most plants. He makes a blunder throwing away the map to where he kept it because of course it means the protagonists find it, but it's a solid plan by Zomboss. And yeah, they came up with a decent enough reason why he can't do it again, because Captain Chestbeard's parrot can destroy the cold crystal with its karaoke skills. Okay, whatever.
Hey, stupid! You're listening to 102.3 WarioWare FM, where we play nothing but microtoonses, and more microtoonses.
This ain't your Mushroom Princess's station.
Waking up! Western Bus!
Back to our scheduled program, Constructionary Tales takes our number 13 spot. This one is fairly episodic in nature, but you could still say that Zomboss has a scheme. Here he's explaining his plan to create trains that automatically take people and deliver them to the zombies in a radio interview format. Pretty strange how the anti-bully squad is not only included here, but seemingly willing to be on Zomboss's side, which was disappointing because seeing them on the cover in Ron Chan's excellent art style was a wonderful surprise. I was hoping we could get a continuation of their story after the events of Bully for You, but that was asking for too much apparently. I don't know, would it have hurt to see them still have some form of resentment towards Zomboss for absolutely embarrassing them in their attempt to take over Neighborville? Or they could maybe do something with the bits and pieces we see of Stubbins looking like he does plan to betray Zomboss at some point. At least we got to see Greg Gantuar feeling sad about Mr. Stubbins seemingly abandoning him. Wouldn't being in the presence of his old squad warrant some kind of fanfare? Anything? Okay, I guess not. Still, the first pieces we got of Mr. Stubbins' ulterior motives were in, oh dang, War and Peas 7 years ago. And they didn't do anything with it outside of one of the bad endings from the Garden Path. At number 12, we have Boom Boom Mushroom, which features Zomboss taking over a local cave system to build a series of hydraulics that cause Neighborville to cave in on itself and fall into the underground zombie base. Sounds pretty smart, right? The issue is the execution. Zomboss connects all of his electrical systems to above-ground wires that can be and were easily tracked straight into his lair, where his plans were conveniently spelled out for our protagonists. He also left his hydraulics out for Tugboat to inadvertently sabotage the mission by using them to build a jacked up tugboat. If he didn't make that crucial error in the wiring, this would have been great. As of now, it's pretty intelligent. And next off at number 11, we have PvZ 3, Welcome to Zomburbia. I was debating whether or not I should even include this on the list since it was taken down, presumably for another soft launch. But until we get something else that actively decanonizes it, I'm just gonna put it here for safekeeping. Once you get rid of all the Gardenscapes rip-off stuff, the mediocre gameplay, the fact that it completely undermines the concept of it being a tower defense game by calling it a puzzle game, which in the description is an insult to the franchise it represents. Wait, what was I talking about again? Anyways, Zomboss is alright here. He doesn't do too much, but at least the stuff he does do, like hack Mo and turn him into an actual murderer, is an okay plot. It also introduced Tugboat to the video games.
And for that, this plot is a Tugboat out of 10, absolute cinema, peak fiction, nothing can ever come close, ever.
Oh wait, Actually, they didn't include Frog Pants or Nigel Blimpbottom, Tugboat's main companions, so that just brings it back down to its current spot. Yippee! And now we have the very first comic, Lawnmageddon, just making the top 10. It's pretty much a retelling of the first PvZ game, but it has enough changes to be considered its own thing. Here, Zomboss is well aware of the plants, so he built a giant fog machine to blot out the sun and drain the plants of their energy. This would allow the zombies to roll over any remaining resistance and take over. He also initiated the attack from underground, giving him the element of surprise. When he's defeated, he tactically retreats to attack another time, as he knows that it's not worth fighting a battle he'll lose anyways. Not very much meat to this one, but it doesn't overstay its welcome and become too nonsensical and extravagant like the later comics are. At number 9, we have the original Plants vs. Zombies game plot. Zomboss' scheme was pretty simple. Use his army of zombies to take over suburbia and eat everyone's brains. That's not bad. I'd imagine that most people seeing an actual zombie would be reasonably freaked out, and those who wouldn't would be a free banquet. Or maybe they wouldn't have any brains to eat to begin with. Whatever works. Zomboss seems to tunnel vision on the player's house specifically, which is kind of odd, but I'd assume that it's because you're 1, associated with Crazy Dave, and 2, one of the few people sufficiently resisting the zombie onslaught. I have to give it to your house's architects, though, if they designed a house that could withstand the entire Zombot stomping around on the roof. Overall, not much going on, but it doesn't need a lot of flair to be smart. Appropriately, the next one in 8th place is the game's sequel, PvZ 2. Here it just seems like Zomboss' plan is trying to prevent Dave from eating a taco again, which sounds pretty stupid, but in reality, he's trying to amass an army of zombies from all across time to throw at you because you resisted his army in the first game. He tunnel visions a lot more in this one on the player and Crazy Dave especially, when he's probably still laying siege to Neighborville and Suburbia. But wait, there's more! Penny's Pursuit actually has a showing of his massive cranium, where Zomboss is able to successfully kidnap Dave. He doesn't really seem to do anything with his prisoner, which is strange, but there's just enough of a connection for a distress signal to go out to Penny and the player so you can save him. The only reason I can see why Zomboss doesn't just eat Dave's brain while he has him is because he needed him to be a damsel in distress to lure you in so Zomboss can get you as well. And if it turns out that Dave was zombified, there would be no point in rescuing him. To that, there's actually a level of smarts. And now we're getting to the good stuff, the near genius tier. Here, all of Zomboss' plans are almost flawless, or just really enjoyable in general. At number 7 at the bottom of the tier, there's Rumble at Lake Gumbo. Zomboss realized that a nearby lake is the main water source for most plants and crops in the area, so he polluted the entire thing to ruin plant life and cause a literal famine in Neighborville. That's actually really messed up when you think about it, and it shows the lengths he's willing to go to when he truly wants to take over the city. The plants also wouldn't have found out if they weren't on a convenient road trip at the same time. The side story where Zomboss goes on a heist to find a super powerful energy source to increase the rate of polluting the lake was also really fun. He would have gotten away with it too if Crazy Dave didn't absolutely stunt on him with the double mind game. There isn't much else to say here, it's just a really solid plan.
Ladies and gentlemen, now we have Battle Extravaganza at number 6.
Where Zomboss plans to purchase an out-of-business bread factory in the heart of Neighborville and turn it into a zombie factory that can unload its troops in a strategic position. First of all, I appreciate the stealth move of buying the factory instead of trying to take it over, as any act of aggression would alert the plants of his plot and make the endeavor a lot more difficult. Unfortunately, Crazy Dave also wanted to buy the factory and the plants found out, but that wasn't really Zomboss' fault. My only question was why he didn't just resort to taking the factory by force once the plants found out about him, but that question was more or less answered later on. He knew that every time he attempted a generic zombie attack, the plants would come out victorious. So his best bet was to engage in a field where the plants handicapped themselves with rules and honor. He agrees to take part in the tournament legally, but continues his stealth plays to cheat as often as possible, even if the plants have countermeasures for a few of his underhanded tactics. This is a very solid plan by Zomboss, and is well deserving of 6th place. The third volume of the comics, Bully For You, is weird, because Zomboss doesn't actually have a main plan that the entire story revolves around. Most of it has him reacting to the anti-bully squad usurping his position as leader of the zombie army, and getting thrown in jail. From what we do get though, it's really good. Good enough to land him a 5th place spot. He created a gas bomb that would encompass all of Neighborville, turning everyone's minds off to make for easy pickings. If it weren't for the anti-bully squad, he actually would have succeeded, which is a pretty enormous accomplishment for his standards. After the story concludes though, why doesn't he just do it again? Unless there's something I missed that prevented his mind-numbing sphere from being replicated, there's nothing stopping him from just making another one and taking the free win. If it weren't for the speed bump at the end, I would have put this in Galaxy Brain, but I'll give him the benefit of the doubt and leave it here. You know, now that I think about it, a very likely explanation could be that since the anti-bully squad threw Zomboss in the slammer, they also ransacked his lab, and very few of his items turned up again afterwards. Chances are they just stole all of his evil gadget-making equipment, and is a big enough setback to prevent him from making another ball of Mud Legus. And if you're asking why the anti-bully squad didn't just steal the Mud Legus ball and use it themselves, given how carelessly they treat Zomboss's other overpowered inventions they took from him, I doubt they're smart enough to know what it is nor how it works, and probably just tossed it into some landfill or something. Maybe Zomboss should have spent his days looking for that instead of the legal deed to Halloween in Lawn of Doom. And just missing out on a podium finish, Timepocalypse is in 4th place. Timepocalypse has a very similar idea to Lawnmageddon, where Zomboss builds a machine capable of draining the sun's energy to sap the plant's strength. Unfortunately, he made the terrible decision to task one of his lackeys with toasting him some Pop Smarts, where the zombie accidentally destroys the machine in the process. Zomboss is quick to recover though, as he immediately organizes a mission to go all throughout time and space to retrieve the parts for his machine, all while amassing an army of zombies from all time periods. I don't have much bad to say about this one. We also get to see We also get to see the other guy from Timepocalypse, as this is the only comic he shows up in. Outside of the initial mistake of letting a mindless zombie near his machine, Zomboss didn't do anything overtly silly here and is well deserving of its position on the list. As a side note, this comic came out over a decade ago, and they described the Far Futures event as the zombie takeover of 2020. If that wasn't ahead of its time, I don't know what is. And now we're in the top 3, aka the Galaxy Brain tier. And in 3rd place, we have the first Garden Warfare game. Garden Warfare 1 has Zomboss launching an attack on Suburbia. Revolutionary, I know. Although this time he equipped his troops with actual weaponry and some combat knowledge. Educating and forming a proper military before launching another strike is a lot smarter than hoping to overrun the opposition by sheer numbers alone, so he scores a lot of points for that. He also aids the zombies directly through boss mode instead of only interfering when things get really bad like in the tower defense games, which is also good. For his more specific plant missions, they're great! He launches an all-out attack on Dave's mansion and aims to blow up his secret plant base. This plan made it so high because of how concise it is. Almost every other plan has some sort of loose end or stupid decision on Zomboss's behalf that drags it down. But this one, I can't find anything wrong with it, even if the overall plan is pretty simple. It would be unfair to put it any higher because there are some that have even better overall plans, so I feel like 3rd place is a more than generous compromise. And the recipient of the silver medal is Garden Warfare 2. I have to mention that the Garden Warfare comics are directly tied with the events of the games, so I'll be ranking these together. Tired of the ongoing stalemate, Zomboss decided to search into the future and find technological marvels that could dominate the plants in the present. And they did. Garden Warfare 2's entire premise is that Zomboss won. Even the way he's temporarily defeated isn't that ham-fisted either, as it was set up that he couldn't see what he grabs, so by the time he realizes he accidentally snagged an EMP rigged by Patrice and Citron, there was nothing he could do to stop it from destroying the time machine and all of the future tech. The second Garden Warfare comic is surprisingly really good when it comes to the plan, only furthering the Garden Warfare 2 package. It actually kind of has two separate plans, but both of them individually are really smart, and the fact that they're both in the same comic makes it even better. The first plan was so good that it worked. For real, I'll just let Patrice do the explaining, as she does so in the actual comic. Oh boy, gotta get ready for this one.
Remember that robotic butt Zomboss had from the future? We managed to wreck it, but it turns out the butt was powered by a future gas, and then saw that helium-like gas escape from the broken butt. Zomboss was able to capture that gas and, working with his scientists, used it to fill his balloons, making the balloon zombies lightning quick! They were suddenly zooming everywhere at unbelievable speeds, attacking before we knew they were there, leaving before we could react. And when we were reeling, Zomboss's ground forces marched in. One by one, our defenses fell. We couldn't stop.
That alone is pretty great, but we get even more. The Neighborville citizens were still able to resist them due to being relatively safe in their homes, so Zomboss then planned to make them struggle out by cutting the power to the city. He does this by painting all over the house's solar panels and flexing on them by making sure they're covered by pictures of him. He also made the paint indestructible. And no, this isn't like the nonsense he pulled in Zapped, as the reasoning here is that he infused the paint with Superbrains' DNA to enhance its strength and make it as durable as SB himself. Which, in the comic continuity, he's immortal for some reason. And also, there's a genuine reason as to why he can't just keep making super paint after the plants were able to find a workaround. A certain brand of sauce Crazy Dave made has the properties necessary to wash off the paint. Yeah, it's kind of a Deus Ex Machina, but at least this solution is replicable, unlike the other times where the plants get lucky once and Zomboss never bothered to try the same thing again. As long as they have the sauce, the paint won't work anymore. His missions are also a step up from Garden Warfare 1, as he looked at the big picture and attempted to not only put the Earth in a state of permanent solar eclipse, but also start another ice age by freeing the frozen Yeti King. This is the only time you see Zomboss' plans go to a global scale, and that's really cool to see. Even though I might like the plots where it's more grounded a bit more, I can't help but say that these plans are undoubtedly smarter. But with all that aside, this is still only the runner-up, which means that there's one more better than this. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. After all of my mental breakdowns, we're finally at the finale. The absolute best plan Zomboss has come up with in the entire franchise, at least in my opinion, is Pedal to the Metal. Zomboss initially plans to do what the Garden Warfare games did by upgrading all of his zombies with overpowered vehicles that can overrun the streets and rid them of the plants and eat everyone's brains, which is good enough as is, but the rest of the comic is what really kicks it into high gear. Zomboss takes a bet where he and the zombies must race Nate, Patrice, Crazy Dave, and the plants around a path outside of Neighborville, where the losing team has to leave the city forever. Well, you know, That's pretty silly, because did Zomboss ever really plan to leave, even if he did lose? He's just wasting his time when he could be invading the city. Oh. That's exactly what he was doing. By agreeing to race, it caused the main cast to leave Neighborville unprotected against a full-scale zombie attack. There's the cunning zombie mastermind I was looking for. Even though the plan ultimately doesn't work because Nate and Patrice catch on eventually, it was still a brilliant move on his end to take advantage of the honor system and technically live up to his end of the bet while launching an attack. And did you think that was it? Even after the plants make it back to Neighborville and interrupt the invasion, Zomboss plays their game by allowing everyone to waste even more time with a series of smaller races around the city. All of this is so he can create a new Zombot, the Massive Munch Machine. This was the robot fight I was alluding to back in the absolute moron tier with better homes and gardens. It immediately shreds the plant defenses, with the plants relying on Crazy Dave's robot he'd be working on.
It's the most epic manga I've ever read.
I shed a tear at the finale.
And might I also mention that banana peels being what wins them the fight is not only a fun nod to Mario Kart, but is yet another bit they foreshadowed when they used them to defeat the piggyback skater.
Anyways, between Zomboss's deliciously evil plan, pretty much outsmarting the main cast, which is a rare occurrence, and allowing the whole thing to be wrapped up neatly with a nice bow, it is my choice for Zomboss' smartest plan. And that's a wrap on the tier list. If you're upset that I didn't include some obscure bonus story where Zomboss sent Tugboat and friends to get him some pop smarts, be sure to let me know in the comments. I know that I yelled a lot at some of these comics, but believe me when I say that this list doesn't accurately reflect how much I actually like each of these, as they're all quite enjoyable to read for a bit of silly fun. Except for maybe the bottom tier. If you want to see more ranking videos in the future, please tell me, but I can't be too sure on when I'll deliver them as this one took me way longer than I was expecting. But anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later!